Forgot to start recording. Thank you for calling me out, Vishal. But we are going to start recording for the good portion of this, the meat of it, and when we actually talk about GA4. So let's get into it. Let's talk about why we're even here in the first place, which is, of course, because a few months ago, Google announced that Universal Analytics was going to be sunsetted. Vishal, when Google made that announcement like a few months ago, on a scale of 1 to 10, how surprised were you by this announcement?
I would say 15 because it was quite a shocker. I mean, we were using GA4 by then when Google announced that GA3 is going to be sunset. But if I would say 90% of the time, I personally used to look out the reports in GA3, Universal Analytics, and 10% in the GA4, since we know that it is still developing and Google is still working on it. But yeah, it was a quite shocker.
I agree. I'm right there with you. So what's actually happening? So not this July, but next July, July of 2023, Universal Analytics will stop processing data. That means we need to migrate over to Google's new version, GA4, proactively. In fact, if we want to have year-over-year data in GA4 by next July, we need to set up GA4 tracking by this Friday. So definitely time, if you haven't gotten it up yet, now is the time to set it up and convert to GA4. But there is some good news. If you are an Elevar customer, and you purchase a done for you service, it's highly likely that we've probably already set up GA4 for you. We've been setting up GA4 properties to run in parallel with Universal Analytics for the past like 6 to 8 months. So I want to know from you guys, and I'm going to launch another poll. I want to know, are you guys using Elevar? Are you already using Elevar for your data tracking? Maybe you know, maybe you don't know. Yes, I'm seeing a lot of Elevar customers and I'm loving it. Awesome. I'm going to close the poll now, share the results. So over 50% of you are Elevar customers. I love it. Yes. So if you guys have purchased a done for you service, it's very highly likely you do have a GA4 property created and you do have GA4 tracking set up. Now, we know that GA4 is the future, Vishal, but we know we have to convert to it, but why might an e-commerce merchant be excited about transitioning to GA4?
Sure. So since we know we have to migrate to GA4, there are some advantages of GA4. One of the major is that GA4 follows the event-based data model. So what does that mean is that earlier when we used to configure any event or any tracking for Google Analytics, Universal Analytics, we need to decide or Google Tag Manager needs to ask us that what type of event or what type of hit you want to track, whether it is an event, page view, social hit, timing hit, or conversion hit, transaction hit. So earlier in GA3, UA3, Google used to bifurcate data based on that, but now in GA4, Google have moved to an event-based data model where everything is an event. So there are no page views, there are no events, there are no social transaction, everything is an event. So page view will also go as an event, a transaction will also go as an event, and all the other user interaction can also be tracked as an event. So that is one of the biggest change that Google have introduced. Along with that, because we are moving to a privacy-focused world, Google have also moved GA4 to a privacy-focused area where all the EU users' data would be processed in GA4 under the EU servers only. So we don't have to worry about Google being legal, illegal, or being in gray area under certain countries or in certain regions, because Google will now be processing all the data for EU user under the EU servers only. One of the biggest reason, one of the good reason to move to GA4 is that Google have allowed BigQuery export for all the free users. So if you have been using actively Google Analytics 3 or Universal Analytics, pardon me if I say GA4, UA3 or GA3 many times during this webinar, because that is also That is one of the biggest confusing thing here these days. So if you have been an avid user of GA3, you might know about BigQuery, where Google stores all the raw data in the raw data format as a storage. So earlier, it was not, export to BigQuery was not readily available to all the free users in Universal Analytics. You have to be on the 360, which is the paid version. But now with GA4, Google have allowed all the free users to export their data to BigQuery. And along with that, Google have also introduced many new connectors with different Google products like Google uh, Google Search Ads 360, DV360, Google Merchant Center, BigQuery, and Google Play as well. But yeah, one of the biggest is BigQuery because let's say in next 10 years, Google ask us to move to GA5 and stop using GA4, then at least we'll have some backup data in BigQuery by then for all the free users. But yeah, the major reason to move to GA4 is that Google said so, and they are sunsetting GA3.
So we have to move to GA4. We know it's happening, but we do have but GA4 does have some really cool features with the event-based data model to help us better look at the data and pull insights from it, better data privacy compliance, which is getting more and more important, and some better connections with BigQuery. So to recap, if you guys want to have year-over-year data in GA4 by next July, you need to set up GA4 already good to go. You probably already have it set up because we've probably already done it for you. So now let's talk about our tracking options. So Vishal, a very easy way to get universal analytics tracking up on a Shopify store is with the native integration. How does GA4 compare? What are my options for getting GA4 tracking?
Sure. So for GA4, right now, Shopify does not have a native integration with GA4 tracking. Unlike Universal Analytics, you just go to your theme settings, appearance, and you just add the Universal Analytics code there, and it starts tracking your data in Google Analytics 3 or Universal Analytics. Right now, that integration with Shopify and GA4 is not readily available. But for all of you, we have got you covered with Elevar. So what we do here at Elevar is that we provide you all the integration between Shopify Store and all the third-party marketing pixels. One of them is GA4. So if you want to start tracking your data in GA4, we have two options for you, which is client-side tracking and server-side tracking. So client-side tracking is the normal events tracking or data tracking, which is out there and mostly used by all the general public. So with the client-side tracking, you just need to go to your app.getelevar.com account, download the GA4 client-side container JSON file, and you just need to import that JSON file into your Google Tag Manager account, and all of your events from your Shopify store, whether it be product viewed, add to cart, checkout, or purchase, all of them would start tracking data into your GA4 property out of the box. And there is another option with Elevar is that you can also opt in for the server-side GA4 tracking, which is that where we make sure that your data reaches to your GA4 property with at most 95% accuracy or closer to 100% accuracy, where we send your transaction data via server side. So those are the two options which are right now available with us, where you can integrate your Shopify store with your GA4 property. Other than that, we are also super excited to announce one feature that will be rolling out very soon, which is the Elevar's fully managed server-side GA4 easy integration. What it allows you is that it allows you to start tracking your GA4 data, like all the events, add to cart, purchase, product viewed in your GA4 property from your Shopify store without even configuring a single tag in your Google Tag Manager account. So that is the easy button. You just need to add your GA4 property ID in Elevar account, and that's it. We will take care of entire implementation from our end, from our server-side tracking, and from the beta result that we have seen our customers using this fully managed easy integration, we have seen that transaction and data recording going up by 20 to 30%. So more data and accurate data with Elevar.
So that's a fun little sneak peek for you guys. So rolling out GA4 server-side integration that sends all events, no GTM tags, no anything, and everything is sent via Elevar server-side. So yes, David,
Yes.
I saw your QA. We don't have to do anything. Yep, you just got to input it in Elevar and we set up the tracking for you on our
Yes. And
servers.
for
Yep.
this Elevar's fully managed easy integration, GA4 easy integration, watch out for our Brad's weekly email where we'll be announcing this out for all the general public very soon.
Yeah. So it's not live yet, but it's coming. All right. So now let's get into the meat of it. So let's talk about the data in GA4. And we're going to go through the top 7 things that you need to know about GA4. And some of these, they're going to be pretty surprising. So the top number 1 thing that you need to know about GA4, and this is baffling to me. And every time I talk with e-commerce merchants, it's always crazy surprising to them. But the number 1 thing is in GA4, there's no conversion rates. You can look in GA4 and all their standard reporting. You'll see the sessions, you'll see the users, you'll see the purchases and the revenue, but you won't see a conversion rate. Crazy. I do think that they'll have to add this in the future, but after we go through our 7 things, I have some really good news for you guys of how you'll still be able to get this data today. But in GA4's current setup, there's no conversion rates in their reporting. The next key thing to know about GA4 is with channel groupings. Channel groupings are a great way to bucket sources. I want to look at all of my organic traffic. And in Universal Analytics, you could really customize that. You could really make it so that whatever UTM tagging structure you use, all the traffic falls into the correct bucket. But with GA4, there's no custom channel grouping. You only have the default channel grouping, and you cannot customize the rules. So in order to get your traffic to fall into the correct channel grouping for GA4, you actually have to make your UTM tagging strategy adhere to Google's default channel groupings. So that's another key thing to know. If you're a heavy user of the channel groupings, it might be time to revisit your UTM tagging structure and strategy and make sure it adheres to Google's default channel groupings structure. Next key item is with the bounce rate. So bounce rate, very key metric, especially in terms of SEO, seeing how different pages are doing and seeing, do users stay, do they engage, or do they bounce? Bounce rate is no longer going to be in GA4, but GA4 is giving you something new, an engagement rate. Vishal, kind of walk us through what an engagement rate is and how it kind of differs from a bounce rate.
Sure thing. So with bounce rate, we are all of us are mostly used to seeing the bounce rate against our landing pages or product pages in order to understand how our pages are performing and how our users are leaving without making any engagement on the pages. So Google have kind of reversed that thing with the engagement rate. So here, what Google is doing, GA4 is doing, is that it is showing us how many users have actually engaged with our page. So what it considers is that if user have spent at least 10 seconds on that specific page or navigated to more than 1 pages or have interacted with 1 conversion event, so that user would be counted as an engaged user and it will be calculated under the engagement rate for that landing page or for that user. So how does that conversion event is getting calculated? So let's say if user is landing on a product page and we have configured the add to cart as a conversion event, we'll be coming to that in a bit. But if we have configured that add to cart as a conversion event and user clicks that add to cart and leaves the website, that user will still be considered as an engaged user and will fall under the engagement rate. So it is quite opposite of engagement rate, but not the exact opposite.
So essentially, instead of looking at the users we don't want, engagement rate really focuses on the users we do want, the ones that are engaging and are interacting with our website. All right, next key item is with filters. So with Universal Analytics, Vishal, can you kind of walk us through some standard filters you would use with Universal Analytics and what that kind of means for GA4 since we won't have certain filters?
So with Universal Analytics, uh, we all must be used to the host name filter, including and excluding certain hosts or certain stores from sending or restricting data into our Google Analytics property. Let's say if I want to only see production stores data in one view, then I will add a filter to exclude the staging host name or other host name. Similarly, if I want to see, if I want to exclude some internal IP addresses of our development team, I would also create an exclude internal IP addresses filter in GA3 Universal Analytics. And similarly, there is uppercase, lowercase filter as well. So if you want to streamline all of the UTM parameters, campaigns, events name to fall under the same bucket, calculated under the same bucket, we usually apply those uppercase, lowercase filter to convert all the details, all the incoming data to lowercase, so that everything falls under the same bucket. But unfortunately, all of those filters are right now not available with GA4. So that is a little strange thing that we need to be much more sure about what data we are sending to our GA4 property in order to keep everything clean there. But yeah, we are expecting Google to come out with an update soon, having all the different features around filters available.
So right now we got to be careful as to what data we're sending in. Probably want to make sure that we are know that it's going to be capital letters are going to matter and lowercase letters are going to matter, and making sure that dev store traffic doesn't go into GA4 because we likely can't filter it out. But we do expect Google to release more filtering functionality. Key thing number 5 is with views. So in Universal Analytics, a common use case for views is if you have international stores. So if you have a store, a domain for your US traffic, a domain for your UK traffic, and a domain for your Australian traffic. So you have 3 different Shopify stores. Oftentimes, for the tracking, you'll send the data to one single property, but Google gives you different views where you can filter out the traffic. So you might have one view that's a roll-up view. It has holistic data for all 3 different stores, so you can see overall how your business is doing. But you'll probably have additional views per each domain. One for just your UK traffic, so you can see just how the UK store is doing, one for just the Australian. With GA4, we don't have the concept of views anymore. We do have this item of subproperties. Subproperties are going to be the equivalent to views in GA4, but the difference is, in order to get access to subproperties, you have to purchase Google 360. So Vishal, for customers that have international domains, but maybe they don't want to purchase Google 360 to get the sub-properties feature, what do we kind of recommend they do to transition over to GA4 with their tracking?
Sure. So similarly, with GA4, we would recommend creating, let's say if you have a 3 different store, one is for US, Australia, and Canada, you need to create 3 different properties, GA4 properties for all the view of how many users are engaging with your brand from top level. So you can create a unified property, normal GA4 property, where all of your 3 stores data will flow into that one single property. But just one thing that you need to make sure is that that one single property have one configuration, default configuration about the currency and time zone. So whatever different time zones and currencies data that you will be sending into that property would be automatically converted. So let's say if you are sending, you have a US store, Canada, and Australian store, all of those currencies would be converted to the main reporting currency and time zones that you have configured in the unified property, GA4 property.
So you'll probably want to have a different GA4 property per international store. And if you want to roll up GA4 property with all your domains, you just got to be careful about the time zone and the currency conversions. Next key thing to know about GA4 is the attribution changes that are common. So Universal Analytics, all the default reporting, it has always used last non-direct click as the attribution method. Vishal, what is the default attribution method going to change to in GA4, and how's that really going to affect the data?
So GA4 now has the data-driven attribution model as default further reporting. So what does that mean? What is data-driven attribution model? So data-driven attribution is an algorithmic attribution model that has been created by Google, which identifies all the touch points that user have gone through before making a purchase. And based on that algorithmic calculation, which is a black box, we don't know how Google calculates that, it attributes the transaction to certain channels that user came from while making the transaction or before making the transaction. So let's say if I have came from 3 different channels, I searched for the store first, then I visited the store, checked out the product, then I came across a Google ad. I visited the product again, checked out the product and left. And then third time I came across a Facebook ad and visited the store and made a purchase. In the last non-direct click attribution model, which is Universal Analytics, our current version of Google Analytics, we can know that that transaction would be attributed to Facebook ads because that was the last channel that user interacted with. But with GA4, it depends on your data, that how the data-driven attribution model would calculate the engagement and the conversion. So what it does is that it analyzes your data over the period, and it starts identifying which is the best conversion path or which is the best attribution model that works out best for your channels and for your conversions. So it is still a black box. There are multiple things coming out about the attribution model by Google. So yeah, that is one of the biggest change in Google that you need to keep in mind.
Awesome. And now our last key thing to know about GA4 has to do with goals. So goals are now kind of being rebranded as conversions. Vishal, kind of talk us through this, what this means, what this does, how you can set this up, and how it'll work.
Sure. So in Universal Analytics, like we used to configure event-based, page view-based, or destination-based, or timing-based goals, now that is not possible with GA4. GA4, since follows the event-based data model, there is only one single option to create goals, which is based on the events that we are tracking. But in GA4, goals are now rebranded as conversions. And it is much more easier to create conversions or goals in GA4. You just need to go to your configure section, head to your conversions, and you will be able to see the list of all the events which are being tracked under your Google Analytics 4 GA4 property. And you just need to toggle, you need to enable the toggle to mark that event as a conversion in order for that event to be considered as a conversion. And once you do that, from that time onwards, GA4 will start considering that event as a conversion or a goal, and it will be available in all the report, let's say acquisition report against the acquisition report, your default channel grouping, to see as how many conversions were there from how many different channel groupings or source media.
So it does affect the default reports and allows you to kind of show those ending goals, but you would also mention with engagement rate, this kind of affects engagement rate too, right? So now you can kind of help better define what an engaged user is and what actions a really good engaged user does.
That is
That was a
correct.
question. Cool. Awesome. All right. So those are the 7 key things to know about GA4, but I told you guys I would have some good news at the end of this list about some of these key metrics. So I know no conversion rates, not getting the bounce rates, not having custom channel groupings is kind of a, oh my gosh, well, there's good news. You can still use Google Data Studio to get these missing metrics. And I got even better news is that we've done the legwork for you guys. So we have already created a custom Google Data Studio report that helps recreate some of those universal analytics reports that you're already used to, but it uses GA4 data. So here, our report pulls in the bounce rate. You can see conversion rate. You can also get the channel groupings report as well. So we will be sending this out to you guys after the call. You can copy it, link it to your own GA4 property, and start getting these same universal analytics reports, but with the GA4 data. So we will be sending this out after the call. All right. All right, now let's talk a little bit more about the kind of the key reports you're going to use in GA4 and how to find some of these key metrics. So there's two main GA4 reports that you're probably going to find a lot of your core data from. And then any data outside of that, it's highly likely that you'll want to use custom reports to get this. But let's first talk about the traffic acquisition report and the e-commerce purchases report. I'm going to walk you through where to find them and what data is included. So I'm in my demo GA4 property. Our standard reports are going to be under the reports section. The first report we're going to look for is our traffic acquisition report. It's going to be under lifecycle, acquisition, traffic acquisition. This report's going to be very similar to our standard source medium report in Universal Analytics, where you can kind of see the source medium and the sessions, the users, the purchases, the number of conversions per each source and medium. By default, it goes to the default channel groupings, but you can also customize this further. So this is very similar to our standard source medium report in Universal Analytics. The other key standard report that you're going to want to know of is the e-commerce purchases report. This is located under monetization, e-commerce purchases. This is very similar to some of that enhanced e-commerce data that you used to get with Universal Analytics, where it shows, you can look at item name, item category, item ID, and you can see how many product views, how many add to carts, how many purchases, how much is the revenue for each of these different items. Now, those are the main two standard reports. If you're looking for additional data, it's highly likely that you'll need to create a custom report. And this is where GA4 is actually awesome. So under this Explore section, so we have reports and then we have Explore down below this. This is where GA4 allows you to create custom reports. So you can visualize the reports in a lot of unique ways, whether it's just free-form data, raw data, where you can view things as a funnel. User does this step and this step, path exploration, segment overlaps, a lot of cool visualizations available. And let's look at an example of one. So this is an example funnel that walks through the checkout steps. So very similar to our checkout behavior report in Universal Analytics. This is a custom funnel that walks us through the shopper beginning the checkout, adding their billing shipping info, reviewing, and then purchasing. And you can kind of see where users are falling off in each of the different steps. But what's really cool here is you can also slice the data a lot more than Universal Analytics. So maybe you want to see how does this behave based upon landing page? How does this behave based upon what device the shopper's on? How does this behave based upon the country? So a lot of flexibility and robust features with the custom reporting that allows you to get a lot of unique answers and insights that weren't available in Universal Analytics. All right, so to kind of recap what we've gone through so far, so Universal Analytics is going to be sunsetted not this July, but next July. So if you want to have year-over-year tracking up by next July, you want to launch your GA4 tracking by this Friday. If you are an Elevar customer, you probably already have some GA4 tracking in place. Some data will not be available in GA4 initially, metrics like conversion rate, bounce rate. So you're going to want to use Google Data Studio as your new best friend to start getting those standard metrics, but from GA4 data. And we will be sending out that standard report after our call. But there's a lot of cool things that are coming with GA4, from the data-driven attribution model to the custom reporting features. There is a very strong value proposition and things to look forward to with GA4. All right. So now we're getting ready for your questions. So in your Zoom page, there is a Q&A tab on the very bottom of it. And you can go ahead and if you click that tab, type in your question. We want to answer your questions and we'll try to answer as many as possible. So start putting in your questions and we're going to answer them live. Now, Vishal, I think we already have a couple questions to go ready, right?
Oh, yes, we have tons of questions that I've added from the chat. in the next slide.
Awesome. So let's talk about them. So number one, so what's going to happen to the Data Studio dashboards based on Universal Analytics data? So you made a custom Google Data Studio report, but you're connected to Universal Analytics. What's going to happen to that report and that data? Vishal, you want to take this one?
Sure thing. So about the dashboards that are already created with GA3 reporting or Universal Analytics Connector. So there are two connectors available now in Data Studio. One is the Universal Analytics Data Connector. Another one is GA4's Data Connector. So if the dashboard is created with GA3 Universal Analytics Connector, then you won't be able to use that same Data Studio dashboard or the same template with GA4. You will have to recreate that dashboard again by connecting the data source with GA4, and you'll have to recreate that report because lot many matrix and dimensions are different in GA4.
So essentially, got to move over to GA4. All right, next one. So is there any way to retain or store the GA3 or Universal Analytics data for reporting after it's sunsetted? How can you keep that data?
So that's a tough one. So right now, there are a few tools available out there in the market, which very few, one or two, which allows you to download entire GA3 data. Those are some custom hacks, not even a proper tool or platforms where you can download all of your key reports and some of your key reports in Google Sheet or Excel. But you won't be able to analyze the data the same way as you are doing right now in Universal Analytics. So as of now, there is no way to migrate your existing GA3 data to GA4 or keep using the data after the analyze window, which will close after 3 months after sunset, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, you will have to move to GA4 and start using. So that's why that is one of the major reasons we are pushing GA4 to all of our customers to start recording at least data in your GA4 so that you have year over year view in your GA4 property, as well as your data model gets trained while you move to the GA4 so that your data model gets updated with understanding all of your transaction recording and how the conversion works.
Awesome. All right, next one. So are there any ways to QA the data in GA4? Are there any key red flags to look out for?
Awesome. So how to QA the data in GA4 is that if you want to QA the data, which is how we usually do, we use a Chrome extension called Data Slayer, which allows us to check all the outgoing requests to GA4, and we can identify if the data is going in accurately or not. And the second way we recommend to just make sure that your data is going in accurately is to use a test GA4 property. So whatever configuration that you do initially, you do that with a test GA4 property. And once the data looks good in that test property, you can change the property ID and start sending that data into your main GA4 property.
Awesome. Will a recording of the presentation be shared afterwards? Yes, it will. We have been recording. We will share the recording afterwards. Next question. So can filtered be created to group metrics by landing pages?
Okay, so right now, there are no filters available with GA4, but there are some filtering options based on dimension which are available, which using which you can filter out and duplicate any dimension value or metric value like that. But as far as my knowledge goes, I don't think there is any option available to group matrix by landing pages or create a custom matrix like that using filters.
Still on the filtering topic, what about the sub-properties? Do the sub-properties have the same filtering functionalities, or maybe they have a little bit different ones?
So sub-properties are right now only available with GA360, which is the paid version. And sub-properties currently do not have the I believe, filtering option. But the thing is that you can filter out the data from your main property and send it to subproperty. So that is how subproperties work. So you can filter out data and send it to your subproperties, and that will be get charged of 0.5 hits against your all the hits that you are sending to subproperties against your GA360 billing. So yeah, that is how the GA360 subproperties work.
Awesome. So does Elevar write any or have any recommended white papers on GA4? Vishal, do you have any on the top of your head?
I think you can refer to our knowledge base section or our website, where you will be able to find so many multiple blogs about GA4. But yeah, right now we are already in process of partnering with pushing out a few case studies about our businesses that we are working with. But yeah, definitely our blog section would be the go-to to go through all the latest GA4 features that we are rolling out.
Absolutely. All right. Oh, we got another page of questions. Yes, I love this. Okay. So we know that Elevar is geared for Shopify stores, but what does it look like for users that are on different platforms, such as WordPress? So I used the point and click tracking with a client of mine. It worked fine. It took a long time, especially because I had to edit some of the pre-made events. What does the automatic event tracking look like for users on other platforms? Is there plans for more support for other platform users? So I have two initial thoughts on this, Vishal. One initial thought I have is GA4, by just adding the GA4 base tag, don't we get some automatic data being captured without additional tags?
Yeah, so by default, if you just create a GA4 property, create a data stream, and just copy the JavaScript that it provides you, that will start tracking the page views and certain events, which are video views, scroll, external link clicks, and some of those basic events. But it does not start tracking the e-commerce data or the custom engagement from your store. So in order to track those, you will have to you'll have to do the custom configuration there if you are outside Shopify. But if you are on Shopify, you can use our Elevar's readily available containers to directly start tracking data for your Shopify store for all the e-commerce events. And we also have a Chrome extension which supports tagging custom events from your store in your GA4 property. So which we can go through in a while. I can also see another question about GA4 events. So we can do a little demo of our Chrome extension recording GA4 custom events there.
I love it. And I'll also mention, yes, it is on our radar to go beyond just Shopify stores, but there's no news that we can share of this at this time. All right. Next question is, can you explain what the report template connectors are for the demo dashboard? Report template connectors. Vishal, do you know initially what
Yes,
this is?
so our demo template, demo data studio dashboard that Jerika just displayed you a few minutes back, having the few metrics which are not readily available in GA4. This is based out of only GA4 data source. So GA4 is the only data connector for this data source. So you can copy this one. We'll be sharing the link for this dashboard in an email after this webinar. So you can duplicate this one, connect it using your GA4 connector in Data Studio with your GA4 property and replicate the dashboard for yourself. Or if you are on a pro or above plan with Elevar, you can reach out to your analyst, or you can write an email to help@getelevar, and we'll be creating this dashboard for you.
Yes. Awesome. So will using both server-side and client-side tags from Elevar cause duplicate data inside of GA4? Should we just use one? So your options for setting up GA4 tracking, you can either set it up fully client-side. So we just use the client-side pre-built tags. We don't do anything with server-side. So just data going through the browser. So that's option one. That will not cause duplicate data. If you want to do server-side current state, the purchase event is what is sent server-side, and the rest of the events, the view items, add to carts, those are still going to be sent client-side. So the current state is a combination between the purchase event being sent server side, and the rest of the events being sent client side. But as Vishal mentioned, and you guys got a little insight on, there is a future state that we're working on where it is going to, all the events are going to be server side. So not there yet, it's coming pretty soon. But essentially, yes, you either want to do fully client side, no server side tracking. We either want to do server side for the purchase event and client side for the rest. And future state, we can go fully server side. Our next question. So do you have the plan to develop the Elevar partner in mainland China, or how to become your partner? We love partners. We have a great partner program. We would love to learn about you and partner with you more. So we do have a partnerships team at Elevar. Oh man, I'm wondering if it's on our site, if there's like a link to become our partner. I don't initially know that answer. But I'll tell you what, we do partner with people all the time. We'd love to know you to become our partner. I'd say reach out to help@getelevar.com and we can direct you to our partnerships team and we can start working together. All right, was that the, Vishal, do you want to make more questions or should we go to that
Yes.
demo of the, more questions.
You can go to the next page.
Yes, okay. Can you
no, you skipped one. You skipped one page.
Oh man, you guys got a lot of questions. I love it. So much interest. Okay, so how would you implement a dimension for hour to be able to break down activity for a day or multiple days of reporting by hour? Vishal, does GA4 not have hour metrics by default?
I need to double check on that in the list of all the available dimension and metric. But with GA3, our hour of the day is available. With GA4, we can check that and get back to you over an email. But yeah, implementing a custom dimension like an hour, I wouldn't recommend you going that way because that would send a lot of unique values to your GA4 custom dimension. And just on a side note, we have seen with a few businesses where if you send values to a custom dimension with high cardinality, like if you send multiple unique values, there are highly chances that all of your report will be sampled just because of that one single custom dimension. So we need to be much more aware about what data we are sending to GA4. There are some GA4 limits which are disclosed and somewhat undisclosed about those custom dimension values. But if you send too many unique values, there is very high possibility that not even your custom reports, explore reports, but your standard reports, they can also get sampled out, even if you are not using that dimension in that specific report.
Awesome. And we will get back to you on this specific question. Next one. So can data import be used to import historical orders and revenue data for previous years? I know that GA4 does have a data import feature.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to export and import the entire data from your Universal Analytics to GA4, that won't be possible. But yeah, I mean, we cannot export and import all of the data into GA4, but GA4 does support some type of, some level of data import, offline data import, which is cost data, item data, and user data. So with related to transactions, I don't think it is currently supported, but yeah, you can import some level of data related to cost data for marketing platforms where you see the clicks against cost, and you see the item level data where you want to upload the cost, the color, size of the products. So you can upload those level of data, but yeah, that is currently the limitation.
Got it. All right, so now we're on to our custom events question. So can you briefly touch on creating custom events? If you create a GTM custom event, how is this set up in GA4? Does every custom event need to be a custom definition? So Vishal, I'll share what I know and I can walk through the Chrome extension. So let's first touch upon what we mean when we say a custom event. So Our pre-built integrations, those cover standard e-commerce events. What our products are people viewing, different add to cart events, collection page view events. But oftentimes, merchants will want to know, will ask questions like, how does interacting with my navigation, or how does interacting with my reviews, or how does interacting with my homepage hero image affect my user's conversion rate? And so to do that, we send the interactions with that specific element as custom events to Google Analytics. So this could be a click on a homepage hero image. This could be a click on a navigation item. So to do that, Elevar has a free Chrome extension that you guys can use. You can download it from the Chrome extension store. You can just search Elevar Chrome extension on Google, and it's our Elevar GTM event builder. You can install into your Chrome extensions. And this allows you to point, click, and create custom events for both Universal Analytics as well as Google Analytics 4, GA4 now. So how this works, so we have our little Chrome extension up here. After you've connected it to your Elevar account, you can create a new event by clicking the purple button. You can choose what type of event, if it's going to be a click event, a visibility event, a page view event, or form submission event. We're just going to do a click event. You can choose what on the website you want to click to, you want to be tracking. So let's say we want to track the shop all nav item. It automatically pulls in the CSS selector for you. So you don't need to go into the code of the website to figure out what trigger you need to use. It does it all for you, which is awesome. We'll confirm it and save this trigger. And now we need to associate the trigger with a tag. And we can choose Google Analytics GA4 as the type or Universal Analytics. We're going to do GA4 because we're talking about GA4 all the time. So we'll need to associate it with a base tag, which will tell us what GA4 property and data stream to go to. You can then choose your event name. So for instance, I can call this, this is going to be a nav item shop all click. And that's going to be the name of my event. You can add in additional parameters per the event or per the specific user. And then you can save your tag and import into GTM to publish. So that's how you can track custom event data and send custom events to GA4 very easily, point, click, and create. Vishal, anything you want to add to that one?
I would just say at Elevar, we have covered you from 360. So we can, with Elevar's pre-made templates for GA4, you can just export and import. You can just download and import those tags into your Google Tag Manager account, and all of your e-commerce tracking would start working out of the box. And if you want to track any additional custom events like navigation menu click or size selector, color selector on your product page, you can use our Chrome extension and readily, you can by your own self create those custom events and start tracking that data into your GA4 property immediately without worrying about or without relying on the developers for tracking those custom events. So we have got you covered.
Yes, good call out. Standard e-commerce events already created, can just import and publish. All right, we got 9 minutes left. We're going to try and get through as many of these questions as we can. The next one is, what is the best way to separate out data from subdomains? And then we would love to know how to track conversion rate by subdomain traffic. So Vishal, you had shared earlier, the best way to separate out data from subdomains, is that potentially going to be to create different GA4 properties?
It depends on how the subdomains are treated. If it is treated as a single business, let's say I have a Shopify store and I'm using a subdomain as a landing page. So we would recommend sending that data from that subdomain to the same GA4 property, since the user would be same, who would be navigating from your landing page to your Shopify store and making a purchase at the end. So if that is the case, we would recommend you sending the data to the same GA4 property. If that is not the case, you have a different subdomain entirely for some different things that you are showing to your customers, or a blog like blog.xyz.com, and xyz.com is your main store. So in that case, we can recommend sending that data to a different GA4 property. Yeah, if that is the case. And the second part of the question is that how would we tracking the conversion rate for subdomain. So you can use the Data Studio template dashboard that will be sending you out right after this webinar. You can duplicate that and connect your subdomain or a main domain with GA4 property linked to it. And yeah, you can start recording the conversion rate by those subdomains in this dashboard until it is not available in GA4 readily.
Awesome. All right. So I understand that there are some issues with Google Signals and thresholding, but not sure exactly the issue. Should we enable Google Signals or keep it disabled for GA4?
Okay, so Jerika, you want to go for it?
I was going to say, I know I've seen it in Universal Analytics. Google Signals helps with cross-device connection and data tracking. Not fully sure on the issues with GA4 though. So
yeah, I would also say the same. We are not sure about the thresholding issue with Google Signals, but yeah, we can definitely look into it and get back to you. If you can shoot an email to help@Elevar, we can walk you through all the details about it.
awesome. All right, 6 minutes left. We got, looks like maybe just 2 more questions, I believe. So can you hint at the platform you're considering? Is it BigCommerce? I have no comment. I'm so sorry. I cannot hint. And is there an ETA on when all the events will be server side? No specific ETA yet, but it is coming. So keep your ear out. We'll email you on our, look out for an email from Brad on his weekly Friday emails. And we'll let you guys know when it does come out. No ETA yet though.
But meanwhile, that comes out, you can start using the client-side tracking for or the server-side tracking that we provide, where all of your e-commerce events except the transaction would be tracked by client-side. And for transaction event, we'll send that data through the Elevar server side so that all of your transaction data that is getting recorded in your GA4 property comes in accurately, and you can match those data apple to apple with your Shopify data, transaction data.
Awesome. All right, well, I think those are all the questions that we had for today. So thank you guys so much for your time. It was so great chatting with you. I loved all of your questions. As you guys know, we were recording our meeting. We will be sending out the recording after the call, as well as that link to the Google Data Studio report for you guys to duplicate and set up for yourselves. So thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much, everyone.